So recording is on. Uh, yeah. So good evening, everyone. Before we begin, please note that today's session is streamed live on YouTube, I think. And it will later,
Yeah.
like if not live, it's going to be there. And it will later also be part of our Duty of Care podcast series. Please keep your microphones muted during the lecture, but we very much encourage you to use our chat to share reflections, questions, and relevant materials. Now, please, Caroline.
Yes. So welcome everyone to another session of the Manifesto for the Just City. And for this year, the final one, the fourth session, which is organized by our center, the Center for the Just City, in collaboration with universities and community partners across the world. So I'm Caroline Newton, and I'm here with Hugo, with Mara. Roberto could not be here tonight, but Nima is here as well, I saw, and maybe some other members of our center. And we have a broad network of colleagues who sustain this collective experiment, for which we are really grateful. And as always, it is inspiring to see again the diverse audience joining from many parts of the globe. But this manifesto for the Just City is not simply a lecture series. It is a collaborative space where imagination, critique, and solidarity come together. It is our attempt to rethink what cities could become if justice, democracy, and care guided the decisions that shape our everyday environments. And tonight we continue that engagement. But we also have to say that as we gather here, the world continues to be shaken by intersecting forms of violence and inequality. We cannot look away from the devastation unfolding in Gaza, where even the so-called ceasefire has not altered the destructions of homes, neighborhoods, schools, and the infrastructures that sustain dignified life. Yet Gaza is not an isolated tragedy. Across the world, from Syria and Sudan to the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Ukraine to Yemen, and in countless territories marked by dispossession, occupation, extractivism, and climate-induced displacement, communities are enduring violence that destroys not only lives, but the very spaces in which life becomes livable. These are not solely humanitarian crises. They are spatial and political catastrophes that dismantle the conditions for dwelling, for learning, organizing, and caring. International organizations and independent human rights observers continue to report acute food insecurity, restricted access to water and healthcare, and the systematic erasure of civic and residential environments. Processes that fracture the social and material foundations on which collective futures depend. And in that sense, our program, or what we try to do, is academic but not detached. We affirm the dignity of all people and insist on the necessity of political imagination, especially in these times of profound despair. The manifesto project upholds care, justice, and democracy as fundamental principles for urban life and spatial practice. And across the 6 editions until today, we have had more than 2,500 participants from 102 universities, contributing in to date 260 collective manifestos, which are all accessible open access. And they are declarations of hope and responsibility, and they remind us that imagining otherwise is not an escape from the present, but a necessary condition to transforming the present. Hugo, the floor is yours.
So now I have the pleasure to introduce you to Marlise Matos. She is a professor of political science at the Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil, where she coordinates the Nucleus for Gender and Feminist Studies and the Interinstitutional Laboratory for Gender Equality. She's one of Brazil's leading scholars on feminism, democracy, political representation, and gender-based public policy. Her work critically examines how patriarchal systems shape institutions, citizenship, and everyday life, and she has served as an expert for organizations including UN the UN's Women, the Inter-American Commission for Women, and Brazil's Secretariat for Women's Policies. She's also widely recognized for bridging academic research, feminist activism, and policy advocacy, particularly in context of democratic erosion and political violence. So, yeah, it's a great honor to have her here today. Her scholarship and activism occupy a vital space at the intersection of feminism, democracy, and the struggle for rights in unequal and polarized societies. Yeah, so she brings decades of research on feminist political theory, intersectionality, democratic backsliding, gender-based violence, and citizenship in Latin America. She has been a voice of clarity in extremely turbulent times in Brazil, but also beyond, insisting that democracy cannot be separated from gender justice, racial justice, and the right to life. And we are very grateful to have her here with us today. So I'd like to give the floor to Marlise Matos.
Thank you, Hugo, for this presentation. It's really nice. I would like to begin thanking the invitation, and it was Caroline that is responsible for this. Many thanks to you, Caroline, and also to Roberto. Sorry, I would like to know Roberto in face-to-face, but it's maybe sometime, maybe in another day, another opportunity. So I told Roberto that I made this presentation, as Caroline have said, in the 5th Forum of International Sociological Association in Morocco last July. And I am really sorry, but I didn't have time to make some changes, but because I'm living a personal situation with my a friend of mine, and she's hospitalized, so I didn't have time to do more than what I have done before. I am sorry for that, but I will try to, and I think maybe this is helpful for your work too. So this presentation refers to my participation in an integrative session presented at the 5th Forum in Morocco in July of this year. And as a co-president of RC32, Women, Gender and Society at the ISA, International Sociological Association, I was part of this panel representing our RC, which also included Joe Lindsay from RC24, Environment and Society, and Kalpana Kanabiran from RC05, Racism, Nationalism, Ingenuity, and Ethnicity. And the main theme of the forum was knowing justice in the Anthropocene. And then we wanted to do an integrative session with this 3 RCs because we would like to make some provocations about this theme from a feminist point of view. And so I will present the text that the paper that I've done for this presentation there. And I wasn't able to adapt it specifically for a discussion on inclusive cities or just cities. I'm sorry for that. But I sincerely hope that the reflections can be useful in some way for you. The title of my contribution was Gender, Feminism, and an Anthropocene, Justice for Whom? From the original provocation of the Post-Human and the Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway in 1985, through the trajectory of a feminist philosopher who stated that the Anthropocene was too big a story two big actors, which would end up leading us to catastrophism, to the assertion that there is no more space for companion species, reaching and defending the proposition that she first referred to label as capitalocene in 2016, and also to Holocene, both opposed to the Anthropocene. Feminists have been asking themselves, what is Anthropocene? Is it possible to speak of an Anthropocene feminism? The proposal of the Anthropocene as a field of knowledge has to be contested knowledge, needs to address the feminism, women and gender, needs to investigate the relationship between feminist thinking and the Anthropocene, establishing the gendered dimensions of environmental crisis, and considering how feminist thinkers have approached a range of environment topics, including, for example, feminized constructions of nature, the masculinism of capitalism, technology, science and environmentalism, and the colonial erasures of the Anthropocene. Our proposal here is to put into perspective the recent production of knowledge in the disputed feud between decolonial feminist theories and the theories of the Anthropocene, throwing light on intersectional environmental activism, which intersects also with wider gender rights campaign, including reproductive and healthy rights, autonomy and equality, representation and participation and in democracies, struggles against class oppression and racism, and feminist, and finally LGBTQ+ critiques of militarization, expressionism, and colonialism. It is about the urgency of reflecting on our partial connections with human and non-human materialities in a decolonial feminist perspective. And in this recent production of feminist critical knowledge, really providing the necessary response to masculinist and techno-normative approach to the Anthropocene, so often taken by techno-scientists, artists, humanists, and social scientists. So the Anthropocene as a science used to treat it may be deeply connected to many current environmental, social, and ethical issues. Here are some suggestions about them. These themes can be related to, first, environmental injustice, dealing with the effects of the climate change disproportionately impact poor communities, especially and in the global south, even though these groups often contribute the least to the problem. Second, resource exploitation. As we are extracting minerals, fossil fuels, and deforesting land for consumption, often harms local communities and indigenous lands too. Third, responsibility and accountability. When we ask who is responsible for the Anthropocene, we must see industrialized nations, corporations, consumers, all of them. This also raises questions about intergenerational justice. What do we own future generations? And finally, it has to do with huge cultural shifts. The Anthropocene challenges the idea that humans are separate from nature, and it pushes for rethinking our relationship with the earth, from dominators to stewards. The Anthropocene marks a time when humans have such a power over the planet that they are reshaping Earth's systems. But it also calls into question what it means to be human in this age of massive technological and environmental change. The post-human concept challenges traditional ideas of human nature. It suggests humans are no longer separate or above nature, but are entangled with technology, other species, and ecological systems. The post-human is a being that transcends the old boundaries of human identity, biological, social, and technological. In the Anthropocene, the post-human is often seen to rethink our ethical and existential responsibility towards the planet. It pushes us to imagine futures where human and non-human animals, machines, ecosystems coexist more symbiotically. Since published in 1985, the Cyborg Manifesto is a foundational feminist and postmodern text that uses the figure of the cyborg, a hybrid of machine and organism, as a metaphor to challenge traditional categories like human, animal, organism, machine, physical and non-physical. Haraway argues the cyborg breaks down these boundaries. This hybrid identity resists rigid categories imposed by the society and offers a way to think about identity and politics in more fluid, inclusive terms. The manifesto critiques traditional feminism focus on women as a fixed category and instead embraces the cyborg as a symbol of complex, interconnected identities. In the Anthropocene, humans are cyborgs in a real sense, deeply intertwined with technology that shapes our environment and bodies. Think about biotech, artificial intelligence, environmental engineering, and more. Both the post-human and Haraway cyborg dissolve the sharp lines between natural, artificial, human, machine, self, and other. Boundaries that the Anthropocene forces us to reconsider as human activity remakes Earth. Haraway cyborg calls for solidarity beyond traditional identities, which is crucial in addressing the Anthropocene global challenges that require cooperation across species, cultures, and technologies. Haraway, as we said, preferred to label the Anthropocene as Capitalocene or Chuholocene, being both opposed to the Anthropocene. The use of the concept of Capitalocene highlights the capitalist system as a global economic system based on endless growth, exploitation of labor, and extraction of natural resources for profit. This term emphasizes that capitalism's logic of accumulation and commodification is a key driver of planetary change. On the other hand, Chuholocene was a term coined by Haraway as an alternative to concepts like Anthropocene and Capitalocene. It offers a hopeful and complex way to think about living on Earth in an age of ecological crisis. The word plays with chthonic meaning something related to the Earth or the underworld, emphasizing deep, messy, interconnected earthly processes. Haraway introduced it to describe an epoch focused on staying with the trouble, learning to live and thrive with multi-species entanglement, complexities, and uncertainties instead of dominating or controlling nature. Some of the key ideas of the Holocene include a sense of multi-species entanglement, as humans are deeply intertwined with other species, microbes, fungi, plants, animals, or even machines. It recognizes co-evolution and mutual dependence rather than separation, and intends to go beyond human-centered thinking. It challenges the human exceptionalism implicit in the Anthropocene and promotes more humble, relational ways of being, emphasizing practices of care, response plus ability, a term Holloway uses to mean being accountable to others, and collaborative survival. To Holocene embraces the complexity and the messiness of real-world ecological and social relations, and instead of trying to fix it or escape ecological problems, Holloway encourages engaging with them critically and creatively. But to really know and understand justice in nowadays, we must ask, who is the anthropo of the Anthropocene? Wouldn't it be better to talk about manthropocene as a way of highlighting that not all human beings are equally responsible for the serious consequences of the civilizational collapse that we are experiencing? So what to do? What do we mean by Anthropocene feminism? Separately, each of the two terms has a clear enough importance, but what does it mean to put them together? And in gender relations, who has contributed most effectively to the injustice we are experiencing now? And that's where it becomes an urgent, as it is necessary to connect gender, race, sexuality, ethnicity with democracy, capitalist economics, and new conservatism. How do these elements link together, for example, in a far-right resurgence of the Anthropocene? Something that we are really experiencing now. As we know, democracy without gender equity, race equity, sexual equity is not complete democracy. It becomes again ruled by the few, not the many. Including all genders in democratic lives, it's not just fair, it is essential for the legitimacy, for the justice, and for inclusive societies. When women's human rights are under attack, when there are setbacks in the achievements of expanding women's citizenship, and that of all those historically excluded from the modern liberal project, colonial and liberal project, women, Black people, indigenous people, the poor, the migrants, etc. What is being carried out in a project of repatriarchalization that includes social, political, economic, moral, and symbolic transformation? My hypothesis is that gender has become what other authors call an autocratic glue. I'll talk about this later. Probably when democracy dies, the rights of women and of Black people, LGBTQ plus individuals, the poor, etc., in all of their constitutive diversity are also dying. The last democratizing frontiers of our liberal societies were in the achievements of rights and power for these groups. This project is not confined to one region or one ideology. Across continents, gender has become what some scholars call an autocratic glue, a rallying point for authoritarian leaders seeking to consolidate power by reaffirming traditional hierarchies. When democracy dies, it often does so at the expense of those whose rights were only recently beginning to be recognized. In many ways, the last frontier of democratization in liberal society lies in the extension of rights and power to those who were historically silent. As we know, in the Anthropocene feminism links environmental crisis and feminist critique, showing that the same systems that cause ecological destruction also uphold social inequalities, gender inequalities, racial inequalities, like patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism. It argues that environmental degradation and the climate change disproportionately affect women, especially marginalized groups of women, due to the systemic inequalities in access to resources, decision-making, and vulnerability to disasters. It challenges traditional environmentalism that often overlooks gender and power dynamics. And it calls for intersectional approaches also, understanding how gender, race, class, and ecology are interconnected. In sum, if there is such a thing, Anthropocene feminism, it needs to be about understanding and challenging the interconnected crisis of gender oppression and ecological destruction, and imagining more just and sustainable futures for all beings. It shows that the Anthropocene as a field of knowledge needs to be contested knowledge. Centering man, we need to say, leads to exploitation, inequalities, and environmental destruction and war, because it denies the interconnectedness of life and the limits of natural systems. It obscures the rules of specific systems like capitalism or colonialism and the disproportionate responsibilities of certain groups. It prevents imagining alternative way of living that decenter humans and embrace multi-species care and coexistence. Feminists and ecofeminists critiques showed how domination of women and domination of nature are interconnected and intersectional, and they are intersectional systems of oppression. Our proposal is to put into perspective this recent production of knowledge in the disputed feud between decolonial feminist and anti-racist theories and the theories of a new Anthropocene feminism. What model can we have today to understand these transformations from Latin American countries, for example? Nowadays, we can even speak of autocratic global and local connections, a real ecosystem of conservative regression, which places patriarchal and conservative gender, race, and sexuality relations at the center. Our argument is that what is being called enemy or crisis in the contemporary society has a central core in gender, race, sexuality, and ethnicity relations, because the answer, the solution sought for this is simply to re-traditionalize, to re-patriarchalize. Despite decades of efforts toward progress and pursuit of reducing gender, sexuality, and race ethnicity inequalities, these are the groups that are most attacked. And the objective of the attacks is to restore the traditional order, bourgeois, white, male, cis, heteronormative order, which has as its anthropocentric focus the perverse articulation of the three N's: nature, nation, and norms. This strategy becomes clearly visible through the fundamentalist systemic attacks with the recurring use of political violence.
Marlise, the connection broke, I think.
Oh no.
Marlise, are you there?
I am hearing
Hi.
you.
Yes, the connection broke. We heard you until you talked about the three ends of nature, nation, and norms.
Okay. Yeah. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Now it's fine again. Thank you.
Okay. I will repeat. Okay.
Thank you.
The three N's: nature, nation, and norms. It's okay. From there. Okay. This strategy becomes clearly visible through the fundamentalist systemic attacks with the recurring use of political violence in our society, in our societies in general, with a focus and a clear direction. The attacks are against rights of women, LGBTQ plus segments, indigenous people, Black people, and other marginalized groups. The attacks are promoted by anti-gender and anti-feminist activists who have in their sights the desire to restore moral, new conservatism and religious fundamentalism. This regressive ecosystem is only possible due to the current stage of capitalism, which is ultra neoliberalism, and which certainly has not been limited for quite some time now to an expressively economic sphere. This new spirit of ultra neoliberal capitalism brings to the imposition of its market rationality to all spheres of life and society. It invades subjectivities, states, politics, daily life, social media. Lastly, we also have autocratization, systemic attacks on the democratic powers of modern states in erosion. This is realized through the induction of affective and political polarization, which is producing the cannibalization of forms of liberal democracy as we know them, leading to the erosion of trust in our political and social institutions and the rise of anti-politics. This is how the emptying of a democratic political culture and the promotion of a kind of non-democratic citizens are openly promoted in broad daylight. All this is reinforced in the most recent forms of punitive populism, lawfare, and judicialization of politics. This is the phenomenon of judges, police, and politicians when confronted with the demand for security, reacting by increasing authoritarian pressure on public policies, on populations, especially the most vulnerable, on the environment, and on human rights. I'm going to the end, okay? It is this recent production of feminist critical knowledge really providing the necessary response to this masculinist, technical, authoritarian normative approach to the Anthropocene so often taken by social scientists as normal. I would like to highlight the alternatives: feminism, anti-racism, decolonial, and LGBTQ theories and perspectives are perspectives that can offer for thinking about the Anthropocene in other ways, and tries to assure that we need a feminist and racist approach to the Anthropocene because the environmental crisis is deeply intertwined with social injustice, especially those based on gender, race, and colonial stories. is that if that is true, is it possible to come to know justice in a context so dramatically made marked by the Anthropocene? Anthropocene critiques the assumption that humanity is a homogeneous forces. Instead, it highlights how masculine power and patriarchal values have been central to shaping and reshaping the social, economic, environmental, and our democratic crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was very powerful. And yeah, I really like how you forces us to rethink the whole idea of the Anthropocene and think about responsibilities and using feminist ideas or anti-racist ideas to rethink this. So thank you so much for this. I'm for sure, I think there are a lot of questions, so I would like to open the floor for the audience. So please, you can just turn on your camera and ask a question or put your question in the chat. Anyone? If it's still quiet, so I'm going to take the liberty to jump in and ask you. Yes.
I would like to say that I have only more 20 minutes to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. More than fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like you end with this kind of positive or kind of giving a positive outlook, and I wonder if you can also tell us if you see these things or see more positive examples in real life that are indeed grounded in feminist thinking or other elements that you mentioned. Where can we see this? Where can we see the change, the needed change? Marlise, you're muted. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I was with my mic was turned down. Yes, my full professor thesis, Caroline, was about what I am calling here a feminist and pluriethnic, democratic and decolonial insurgents in Latin America. I don't know if you have ever heard about the pink tide in Latin America. It was a special moment when governments of left and center left wing come to power. It started in the end of the 80s, in the beginning of the 90s. And in Brazil, it started with the first government of Lula, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in 2000. And all over Latin America, we had some examples of this government acting in different ways with for women and gender and race opportunities, because they focused on what I can tell you about every one of our 20 countries in Latin America. For example, they had a national organization for public policies for women, or for gender and race public policies. All of them. They have what we can say national plans for public policies for women and for ethnic and indigenous people, for example. We had what we call here, I'm trying to translate it, what we call how can I say this in English?
Pode falar em português que
novo constitucionalismo latino, the new constitutionalism, Latin American constitutionalism. I don't know if this is translation yet. And we had in Ecuador and also in Bolivia, the new constitutions, they put nature as citizens, for example. They put human and non-human in the same status of being citizens of rights, that demand rights. So these are some of the examples. So we are trying to face feminicide statistics here, because we have a very huge problem with gender violence and violence against women, also political violence against women. We just saw in Mexico, the president of Mexico being harassed in public, the public streets. So this is really very important here. But we are trying to face we have the first international document or declaration for to face political harassment and political violence against women in politics. It comes from Latin America, you know. The very definition of violence against women was from Declaração de Belém do Pará. And this was included in CIDO, but the definition is from Declaração de Belém do Pará. So we have many things that we are trying to address to face this colonial system that that makes oppression, gender, race, and ethnicity, and sexual oppression so huge for us. So we are really trying to address it here. We have lots of examples that also here with the COP13, we're having just right now COP13 in Belém do Pará, also in Belém do Pará. So we are just trying to address environmental crisis with gender and ethnicity focuses. So this is a huge task to do, but we are being, in my opinion, somehow being successful in doing things that can change the reality for these people. This is not all complete, this is not ended, but we are trying to. This is the thing that I would like to say, you know.
Thank you very much. Marlise, I see that Esther also has a question. Esther, I guess you want to open your camera and ask the question?
With community. Hi, Marlise. Hi, everyone. My English is not good, but I'm from Brazil, and now I am in Delft in Netherlands, doing part of my PhD, and I work in São Paulo, in favelas with women. So for me, it's very important in universe, in urbanism, understand and talk about it, because I think these women have a spatial role in favelas, in the construction, the different projects. So I would like to understand better what your opinion about it, in what you see in Brazil or in America Latina. how do you see the role of a woman in building social justice? So yeah, I would like to understand your specific opinion, but if possible, in context in favelas, because I think when you talk the city, this moment there are different actions to participate, to involve the women to construction our cities, but in favelas it's different because we have violence, because we have big difficult. So, what your opinion about it?
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Esther. And maybe if we were speaking, my gosh, delay my camera. Sorry. If we were speaking in Portuguese, it would be better, isn't it? Esther. Yes. Esther, here in Brazil, I am, and also in my discussion about the Latin American countries, I am saying that feminism is not anymore just a movement, a social movement. I'm calling it as a feud of pretty marked differences, intersectional differences that has two different axes and two different directions. I used to call feminist movements here have made a side-streaming movement. And when we talk about feminism, we can see in the student movement, we have feminism. When we look at the fights for land and for in Movimento Sem Terra in Brazil, or Movimento Sem Teto in Brazil, we can see the feminist. When we talk about the racial movements, we have the Black feminists. And what I am trying to say is that feminism is this rhizomatic thing that penetrates every other movement. You know, this is one X of this thing that I'm calling fourth wave of feminism in Latin America, and also in Brazil. And I will try to tell you that popular peripheral women in favelas and ghettos are the protagonists of these changes. You know, most Black women are in our countries, Black and indigenous women. The other X is what I am calling the mainstreaming of gender. We saw, and I told Caroline about this in the last answer, that we have all the states in Latin America have an institution or an organization for public policies for women, and also for racial, to promote ethnic and racial justice. All of them. In the 20 countries, they have an organization in the state to deal with it, and to race and gender public policies. And when we go to the universities, the centers of gender studies in the universities, and the parties, we have feminist institutionalization inside the parties and the political parties in Brazil. What I'm trying to tell you is that feminism went beyond social movements in Latin America. They have institutionalized in every institution that you can see, political, specifically political institutions. We have feminists in somehow, in not always leading the institutions, but always there making changes. As sometimes it's minuscule, very little efforts to change things, but they are there. Women are there. In the street protests, our last huge public protest in Brazil was in 2018 against the election of Jair Bolsonaro. So we have this huge millions of women in the streets in Brazil to say not him, or in voice and out loud for everyone to hear. When we look at the intentions of women as voters, today women are the ultimate resistance from this is spread out, this is dissemination of the extreme right. Here in Brazil, for example, women vote against Bolsonaro and pro Lula. This was the thing that makes change and changes the results of our last presidential election. And also in the United States, when we see women's the pollings and the results of the elections, women are resisting to this expansion from the right-wing ideologies and politicians. So what I'm trying to say, I am not only optimistic, as Caroline insisted, and you are telling me, where is the resilience? Where is our huge problems? Our huge problems are really with Black, peripheral, faveladas, women in Brazil and also in our Latin American countries. But they are fighting. They are occupying the streets. In the 25th, in this month, we will have Marcha das Mulheres Negras in Brazil. They are trying to put 1 million Black women in the streets in Brasilia, fighting for bem viver, and also for reparações. I don't know how to say this. Justiça reparatória, reparations, racial reparations, justice. I don't know.
Yes, it's that.
Does exist in English, you know? In my opinion, Esther, Black poor women are today the protagonists. Besides they are the first victims of this Anthropocene system of violence, you know, but they are struggling to fight it.
Thank you, Marlise. I'm looking at the time. We have 2 more minutes. Is it okay for one final question? So there is one question that was put in the chat that I will read. So the person writes, today, a Dutch regulatory police officer told me that racism doesn't exist in the Netherlands. Rather, the problem is that immigrants and refugees do not learn the language. In retrospect, I realize she is willing to believe it is lack of effort from refugees, immigrants, Black people to learn the language. My argument was that police and other Dutch institutions do not take non-Dutch people serious and dismiss them. How does one respond to ignorance of racists to a government official in one of the richest countries in the world?
This is really something, you know. I don't know if I have an answer for that, but and in my opinion, this question is connected with after questions, because almost all the time, immigrants, they are almost all the others, the rest of the population. So we have first we have to deconstruct this notion that societies are not racist societies. They are simply as that. They are sexist, misogynist, and racist societies. We live in this world, you know, and our efforts is to confirm that this is what we are facing. We have to face it and make people understand that this is true. We have racist and misogynist society. This is the first step. Is it easy to just deconstruct this ideal, this imaginary sentiment that we are pure, that we are democratic, that we are beautiful? No, this is not easy to do, but it's necessary. This is the first step. And refugees, immigrants, Black people need to make a coalition, you know? This is what we are doing here in Latin America. Coalizão Negra por Direito, for example, the Black Coalition for Rights. They are trying to be, all of them to be together and to act together and to think together and do things together. And this is, I think, the next step, to collectivize, to make this fight a collective, not individual, an individualistic problem, you know, because it's not individualistic. This is a collective problem. And try to face it and make the society understand that we have to change it. I don't have an answer for the Dutch institutions, but I think this is working here. It is not a paradise. We are still struggling. We had last month a huge police killing in a favela in Rio de Janeiro. It was a tragedy. It was a necropolitics action of the government of Rio de Janeiro, but we are fighting it, and that's what we have to do.
Thank you very much, Marlise. I think you need to go, but I want to thank you so much. It was amazing to have you here in our session, and I look forward to meeting you again on a future occasion. And so it's now we will continue working with the students in little breakout rooms and discussing. But for now, I think a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It was really nice to be with you this time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was a very inspirational presentation. And now I think we can go into the breakout rooms, Hugo.
Yes.
We have a lot of food for thought. We still have our documents from the last time where you can add the things that you discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will call you back in 15 minutes.
Maybe can you share the link
in the chat
beforehand here? Yeah. I don't have it ready with me now, sorry.
No, I'll do that. Here is the link.
Yeah. So guys, you can use that docs. And like as you talk, you can add on this docs. I'm gonna create a breakout room, so see you soon.
And then we can also answer some more questions that might be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I also liked Nima's question because I was also thinking about it.
Yeah.
About the idea of inclusion and yeah, those things as well.
Yeah,
Of course.
unfortunately, we didn't have time.
No, yeah, sure.
The discussion could go on for, that's a nice thing.
Mhm.
We'll pause the recording as well.